Okay, hi everyone. I think we should be live. People should be able to jump in. Let's wait a few minutes for that to start happening. While we're doing that, I'd love to see who we've got here. If you want to say hi, I'll try and pump up the energy. Obviously, being British, I am terrible at that, so we'll see what we can do. I'm hoping as well, I didn't ask, which of course is the the stupid thing to do. Is the audio working okay? Is the video working okay? If anyone has any questions or any issues about that, just let me know and we'll see if that becomes an issue. Good stuff. So before we jump in, I'll give a quick overview of the format. I'm going to talk about the topic today for about 35-40 minutes, and then we're going to keep as much of the time as possible, at least 15 to 20 minutes open for questions and for sort of in-depth discussion and looks at like people's particular newsletters. So as we're going through, if you have any questions or if you think, oh, wow, I wonder if that strategy would work for me, please just sort of put that into the chat. We'll record it as a question. And then at the end, we can take an in-depth look and we can go through some examples of a couple of different newsletters of how maybe I would grow them or some things you could do to grow faster. Perfect. So before we jump in, I would love it if everyone who's here, if you could just give like a quick overview in the chat, maybe share a link to your newsletter, maybe tell us what kind of newsletter it is, roughly how many subscribers you have, what your goal is subscriber-wise for the end of the year. I would love to see that. It gives us an idea of who we're talking to and what we should be tailoring the advice to, and we can circle back to that towards the end for those questions as well. Awesome. It's awesome to see some familiar faces in here as well. And just a quick reminder as we jump in, we are doing two different masterclasses. There's one today and there's one at the same time next week. Today's masterclass is going to be really about that sort of second growth stage. So it's from 100 subscribers all the way through to 10,000 subscribers. If you have a larger newsletter and you're trying to grow to 100,000, 500,000, 1 million subscribers or more, we have a masterclass on that as well. What we're going to cover in that is going to be very different. And if you already have 50,000 subscribers, what we're talking about today might be interesting, but it's not going to be super, super relevant for you. So you'd almost be better, I don't know, using this hour to go and get some fresh air and some sunshine or something, and then come back next week for the more advanced masterclass. Awesome. So it's awesome to see a really good range here of different newsletters. I'm looking forward to this. So why don't we just jump straight in, and we'll do about 35 minutes and then we'll open it up for questions and in-depth looks at your own newsletters. So if you have any questions as we go through, just stick them in the chat and we'll come back to them and revisit them. Awesome. So today, obviously, we're here to talk about how to grow your newsletter to 10,000 subscribers. And maybe the big question is, why listen to me about this? Well, I'm a really boring guy. All I do at SparkLoop is basically help newsletters grow faster. And we've helped at this point a couple of thousand different newsletters from literally 5 subscribers all the way up into the 2 or 3 million subscriber range to grow faster. We've seen local newsletters, we've seen B2B newsletters, we've seen super niche newsletters and super broad newsletters, including at this point, most of the newsletters that you read, I imagine, or most of the household name newsletters. We've worked with them to help them grow, primarily through referral programs, but with partner programs, recommendations, and a whole host of other stuff as well. And obviously, we're always looking at what else is working for them, even if it's not something that we're doing directly for them. So we've seen pretty much everything that can work. We've seen all the stuff that doesn't work, and we've seen how that's changed over the last couple of months. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So I just saw someone's having some sound issues. Looks like, are we still okay sound-wise? Yep, okay, good. Looks like just one person. I'm sorry about that. I can't help you. If everyone else can hear, then we'll go through. Okay, so today, like I said, we're looking at the 100 to 10,000 subscriber stage. And the way I like to think about subscriber growth and how we practice this at SparkLoop is to split it up really into 3 different stages. You have that very first stage where you have less than 100 subscribers. where you're really just figuring out what is your newsletter, who is it for, who is my audience, all that kind of thing. And we're not going to help you with that today, because in our experience, if you struggle to get to 100 subscribers within kind of the first couple of weeks of launching, there's something that isn't quite right yet about your newsletter. It hasn't clicked. You're still in discovery mode. It isn't time to start thinking about growth, really. It's time to start spending more time with your audience, hanging out where they are, building a name for yourself in other places, and making sure you really understand what they want and what kind of newsletter you should be writing. Similarly, like I mentioned before, we're not going to be talking about how to go from 10,000 subscribers all the way up to 1 million. What we are going to be talking about is that middle stage where you want to start growing, but you don't have the budget and the team to grow really quickly, but you want to get to that point where you can start doing that and turn this into a serious business, basically. So after this masterclass, really, I want 3 things for you. The first takeaway that I hope you get from this is that your newsletter, almost every newsletter, could be growing much, much, much faster than it is at the moment. There's a lot of potential there. It's quite easy to get if you just have a slightly more aggressive mindset and you're not doing the same old things people were trying to do 10 years ago to grow their newsletter. The second thing I want you to come away with from today is the 6 most exciting newsletter growth channels for 2023. We started SparkLoop about 3 years ago, and I was working in newsletter growth for a year or 2 before that. And really the playbook in that time period from like 2018 to 2021, 22, it didn't really change that much. Facebook ads and stuff were kind of going up and down, but other than that, it was really kind of the same playbook. And what you'll notice today, and what we've seen over the last 6 months really, is that that playbook has changed. The way that you'll grow fast in 2023 is very, very different to what was working a year to even 3 years ago. And I want you to be aware of that and to understand that so that you can use it to grab that opportunity and to grow faster this year as well. And then the real aim of today is that when you leave in about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, you feel confident and you can create a plan for your own newsletter growth that will get you to at least 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year without really having to spend a lot of time on it, and definitely without having to spend really any money on it. So let's jump in. And the first thing before we get into sort of the more tactical stuff is I want to talk about what makes a newsletter grow. Because you've probably seen there are some newsletters, they kind of look identical, but one of them gets stuck growing at 5 or 10 subscribers a month, and the other one hits 10,000 subscribers within a couple of weeks. And it's not really obvious from the outside why that would happen, because both have what feels like pretty good content, regular cadence. You see them on Twitter and so on. So the most important sort of foundation for newsletter growth is obviously that you have really high quality content and that you're publishing it consistently. If you look at what separates a Morning Brew from a lot of other Morning Brew clones, there's a lot of other stuff happening, but the main thing was just that the quality of the content and the consistency of that quality was high. And if you don't have that, then everything else you do will just be kind of wasted effort and wasted money. So if you are starting to think about growth, make sure you have that part right and make sure it stays right and that you're not sacrificing quality for growth or for revenue or for anything else. Once you have the quality of the content and the consistency right, the next most important lever is the revenue you make per subscriber. And if there's one thing I leave you with today, it's that revenue per subscriber is probably the most important factor in how fast your newsletter will grow. If you make $2 for every single subscriber you have, that really limits how aggressively you can grow your newsletter, and it really limits how quickly and how much you can invest into growing your newsletter affordably. If, on the other hand, you monetize your newsletter very well, and you're making $10 or $20 or $30 per subscriber, all of a sudden you can just grow way more aggressively. You can afford to invest more into influencers, into partnerships, into promotions, into social media ads, into all different kinds of things that you couldn't justify before. So if you're at the lower end of revenue for your newsletter, instead of thinking about growth, think about how you can increase the revenue per subscriber. And what we can talk about maybe in the questions is what good revenue numbers would be. We actually have a subscriber lifetime value calculator here at SparkLoop, which you can use. And I'll put a link to that in the email after today's session, so you can go and use it. And ballpark, what we're seeing is sort of very high level newsletters that have multiple revenue sources tend to have the highest revenue. So not just advertising, not just subscriptions, not just affiliates, not just their own products. Having a mix of those tends to be the highest. And what you should be aiming for is something in at least the $15 to $20 range. If you have your own products that you're selling, or if you're in a B2B niche, that could easily be $30 to $50 per subscriber. And if you're under 10, or if you think that you're going to stay at under 10, if you still have a very new newsletter, you really want to be thinking a lot more about how you can grow that revenue before you start trying to grow the audience itself. So the first task I would leave you with before you start even thinking about growth is to try and calculate what your subscriber lifetime value is, or if you haven't started monetizing yet, what it's likely to be in the future. I'll include the calculator for that. It takes about 5 minutes. It's nice and easy in the email after today's session. Secondly, you want to define what your acceptable payback period is. So it's all well and good to say you make $20 per subscriber, but if you don't make that within, until a year after the subscriber is subscribed, you can't really be very aggressive with your growth, because you can't pay $19 for that subscriber and then wait a year until you get the 20 back, unless you have, a lot of money from some sort of financial backer behind you. So what you want to work out is basically how quickly does that money from that subscriber come in on average? How much do you have after a month? How much do they pay you after 2 months, after 3 months, and so on? And then work out what sort of the acceptable range is for you. How long can you wait, basically, until you recoup that investment for that subscriber? And at this stage, the 100 to 10,000 subscriber stage, you don't need accurate numbers on this, but it's just something you want to start thinking about and have a rough idea in your head. Can you Can you afford to pay $1 per subscriber? Can you afford to pay $2 per subscriber? Can you afford to pay $3 per subscriber, and make that back within a time period that doesn't leave you too far in the red? So think those things through. Again, at this stage, you don't need to have an accurate number on this, but it's useful to start thinking in these terms. Right, so let's dive into the actual growth part. And today, the way that we like to think about growth is in terms of 3 different growth levers. So you have your time that you can invest into growth, you have your money that you can invest into growth, and you have what we call growth loops, which is basically you invest either time or money into that, and then it keeps growing your audience sort of on autopilot for you, basically. A subscriber in equals more than 1 subscribers out. Now, all 3 of these are important, and we'll do some examples in a second, but all 3 of them change over the life cycle of your newsletter. So when you're in that 0 to 100 subscriber phase, you can't really invest money into growing your audience. Not well, because you don't know it enough yet, and you don't know the words that'll work. You don't know all of that kind of thing that will help you to grow your audience. Also, a growth loop, like a referral program, for example, or SEO, is not going to kick in that 0 to 100 subscriber phase. If you only have 1 subscriber, you could have the best referral program in the world. You've still only got 1 person who can refer you. So it's going to take forever if you rely on those 2. So you're mainly in that first phase relying on your time, basically. Going out and cross-posting, asking people to subscribe, figuring out cross-promotions, that kind of thing. As you go from 100 to 10,000 subscribers, that changes a little bit. Your time is still the main thing that's going to get you growth, but money becomes viable. You can afford to pay for subscribers, for example, via Facebook ads, or by sponsoring other newsletters or influencers and things like that. And because you have a larger existing audience and you've had more time, things like SEO, like referral programs and word of mouth start to become more effective in absolute terms as well. They'll make up a bigger percentage of that growth. And then as you go from 10,000 up to 1 million subscribers or more, which isn't what we're talking about today, basically, your time, the amount of time you can invest into doing things that will grow your audience directly, it just becomes irrelevant compared to the number of subscribers you need. You could post in every single Facebook group on the world. You could spend all day, every day doing that if you have 500,000 subscribers, and it's still not going to move the needle for you. Whereas investing into Facebook ads, investing into word of mouth, investing into growth loops like SEO, that is going to move the needle at that point. So when we're in this middle phase, this 100 to 10,000 subscriber phase that we're talking about today, we have to balance investing our time and our money into getting new subscribers today, but we also have to think about building out these growth loops so that once you get to 10,000 subscribers, 20,000, 50,000, and so on, you don't suddenly hit a wall where you can't grow any faster. You have to be investing now to be able to grow fast in the future. So what we're talking about today isn't just how do you get to 10,000 subscribers, because that's nice and easy, right? You could just go and buy some horrible, dirty list of subscribers from God knows where and have 10,000 subscribers. But that's not useful to anybody. What we're talking about is how do we get to 10,000 subscribers in a way that is going to enable us to grow a high quality audience up to 100,000, 500,000, a million, and so on. And the way that I like to do this, if I'm helping newsletters to think this through at this stage, is with a really, really simple little exercise that we're going to do in a second, and I'm going to show you some examples. But before we do these exercises, I want to walk you through what, in my opinion, in our opinion, are the 6 most exciting growth channels for 2023 that should be applicable for almost everybody. We'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes on that. Then we'll look at these examples and we'll talk about how you can create this plan yourself. And we'll look at the example of a local newsletter, a niche kind of B2B newsletter, and a more generic media newsletter of like the Morning Brew, Daily Upside kind of variety as well. So let's jump into those top 6 free channels first up. So the first and probably the most exciting growth channel, growth strategy I think that you can use for your newsletter in 2023 is going to be cross promotions. Again, we're talking specifically here about the 100 to the 10,000 growth stage. In my opinion, every single newsletter operator should be running a cross promotion at least twice a month. And what I mean by a cross promotion is reaching out to another newsletter operator who has a similar-ish audience and saying, hey, I'll share a link to your newsletter and recommend it in my newsletter if you do the same for me in yours. So what we found is that it's actually not very important that that other newsletter writes about the same thing you do. If you write about marketing, it isn't actually that important that you only cross-promote with other newsletters that write about marketing. What's more important is that you're reaching people who like newsletters and you're reaching people in the same demographic. So if most of your marketers that you're trying to reach are 30s, 40s, 50s, US based, it's absolutely fine to do a cross promotion with a finance newsletter, for example, or with a like a generic daily newsletter, for example, because a lot of those people will be marketers and a lot of your audience is also interested in daily news. But the important thing is that they're part of that very small percentage of the population who are genuine, enthusiastic newsletter readers. And that's the harder part to reach. So don't be picky about who you do cross promotions with in terms of the content. Just be picky about them in terms of obviously the quality and whether you feel comfortable recommending them and whether it's the same kind of demographics as your audience. The best thing you can do to improve the quality and the results of your cross promotion is to use what's called a magic link, which is a tool we invented about a year or 2 ago at SparkLoop that allows people to one-click subscribe from inside your newsletter to the other person's newsletter. And we actually have a free tool for that. If you go to sparkloop.app/magic, you can join up and get that free tool that allows you to basically one-click or allow other people to put a one-click subscribe link into their newsletter and send those subscribers through to you for free. And you'll get about twice as many new subscribers doing it that way. The quality is really high. And then the last thing I would say is when it comes to cross promotions, there are hundreds and hundreds of different places you can go on the internet to find newsletters to cross promote with. In general, that's kind of a waste of time. By far, the best results we see from cross promotions are just reaching out to newsletters you read and asking your existing audience, A, do they have newsletters of their own? And B, what other newsletters did they read? Include that in your welcome flow, even for the newsletter. If you have a welcome sequence, ask them, hey, can you recommend your top 3 newsletters for me? Can you just hit reply and tell me if you have a newsletter? I would love to give it a shout out in ours. And you'll get a steady supply of really good ones that will be able to recommend you. And that's probably the best way to source those. The second major growth channel that I think is underrated for 2023 is giveaways. And what I mean by giveaways isn't necessarily a referral giveaway. We've seen those in the past, obviously, they do work very well. But what I'm talking about here is a giveaway to get new subscribers onto your email list. So the playbook that we've seen work really well here, that Aleida Solis from the SEO FOMO newsletters used and many others are using at the moment, is to go out and find a couple of relevant brands to your newsletter, partner up with them and say, look, hey, all you have to do is provide the prizes. I'll share the email addresses with you. I'll do all the work. Just provide the prizes and give it a shout out on your socials and in your own newsletter. And then one lucky person or a couple of lucky people at random will win all those prizes, which will have some huge value of, $20,000 or $100,000 because you've got them from all of these different partners. This works best if you tie it to some sort of intrinsic milestone. So if you say, look, this is part of us trying to reach 5,000 subscribers for our newsletter or 10,000, it gives people an intrinsic incentive to share, not just because they want to win the reward. And you also want to be very careful to set clear expectations from the partners, because the main value of this for you isn't going to be from your own audience signing up. It isn't going to be from your social audience signing up. It's going to be from each of those partners that you're working with sharing with their own audience. So if you haven't set clear expectations and made it very easy for them to do that, you're not going to see great results. And then maybe the most important part of this is to take those connections you've built with the giveaway partners, with those brands, and to say, hey, thank you so much for giving me the air fryer or giving me a year's free subscription to SparkLoop or whatever it is as an offer. That's great. I would also like to give a $50 off coupon or a $10 off coupon or whatever it is. And I'd like to include that as a gift for all of my subscribers. And in return, I'll keep mentioning you and recommending you throughout the newsletter, and it'll be free exposure for you. All you have to do is give me this little coupon. And you take those coupons and you turn them into a coupon book, which is worth, $2,000, $3,000 in total. And that becomes your lead magnet. It becomes something you can use as a referral reward. It becomes something you can use if you're doing adverts as like the thing that people opt into. And it becomes a really, really effective way of getting people onto your email list and growing in the future. The third one is going to be a bit of a surprise. It's paid social ads, so good old-fashioned ads on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and so on. And there hasn't really been anything that's changed for the better there. So you'd probably be a little bit surprised to see that on here, especially when I'm talking about ways that you can grow your newsletter for free. But the thing is, at SparkLoop, we've come up with a new tool called Upscribe, which I'm going to talk about later. And as part of what Upscribe allows you to do, when someone subscribes to your newsletter, you can recommend other newsletters to them, and you can get paid for those recommendations. So imagine this. Someone clicks on a Facebook ad, they go to your landing page, they opt in, they're shown recommendations for 2 or 3 other newsletters, and they sign up for those, and you get paid for that subscriber signing up. Now, this is a huge revenue source in and of itself, and it's, there are newsletter operators making, 6 figures a year just from this alone. But what's really interesting about it and why it makes paid social ads so exciting in 2023 is that it means you can pay $2, $3 a subscriber to Facebook if you have Upscribe embedded on the opt-in widget for your newsletter, because you're likely going to be making $3, $4, $5 within a couple of days for each of those subscribers who signs up. So what it basically means is, in effect, growing on Facebook, growing on paid social has become free as long as you're using the Upscribe widget. And that's the real sort of innovation. That's why all of a sudden it is incredibly scalable and incredibly affordable in a way that it wasn't even 6 months or a year ago. So if you're interested in growing via paid ads, check out the free masterclass that we've put together. I'll include a link in the email after the webinar. Use that coupon booklet I was just talking about as the main opt-in incentive if you have one, and make sure that you're using the Upscribe widget and you're recommending 2 or 3 other paid newsletters, because it will just make all of that growth basically free. And in a lot of cases, you might even make some additional revenue on it as well. Before of the 6, we're going to move on to what's called the partner program. And this is a new tool we've developed at SparkLoop. Originally, we started using this with slightly larger newsletters, so on the route to 1 million subscribers. But in effect, it's kind of like an affiliate program for your newsletter. Basically, you say, I want to pay X per high quality subscriber, maybe $1, $2, $3, whatever. You set that up. We introduce you to thousands and thousands of pre-approved newsletters who can go and recommend you without you having to do any work. They'll send you through subscribers. And based on how many high quality subscribers you get, you just pay for the results at the end of the month with one click, in effect. And this has become hugely, hugely successful for really all different kinds of newsletters. You can grow via these partnerships on autopilot, needing to do nothing, and you're always guaranteeing that you're only paying for good subscribers and you're only paying the amount that you can afford. And when you plug this in again to Upscribe with the recommendations widget, because you're recommending other newsletters, you end up not even paying in effect for those newsletters. So this is definitely something worth thinking about, not if you're in the local newsletter space, but if you have a niche B2B newsletter or a general sort of media newsletter, this will be by far and away one of the best drivers of growth for you from 100 subscribers and up. Number 5 is the referral program. So if you have a referral program for your newsletter, on average, you can grow about 35% faster via that. It's not going to be super effective when you get to 100 subscribers. As you get to 5,000, 10,000, you start noticing the difference. And if you invest early in the referral program and build that culture of sharing from day one or as close to day one as possible, as you get to 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 subscribers, that 35% faster growth will continue. And even though you're only getting maybe 50 new subscribers a month in the early days, you'll be at thousands and thousands of new subscribers who are super high quality within that time period, basically. So as you grow. The most important thing with referral programs to bear in mind is that you need to use unique and creative rewards. We have a rewards booklet at SparkLoop that I will include in the email after the masterclass, which will help you come up with that. But what you can't do is invest sort of a little bit of time into the referral program and just say, oh, I'll do stickers and I'll do a free download and I'll do a giveaway of a $100 Amazon gift card or something every now and again. If you put a little bit of effort in, you'll get tiny results. This is one of those things where you have to be unique. You have to really understand your audience. You have to give them something that they care about. And it doesn't have to be a monetary value. It should be something that's unique, that's exciting, that's personal, that has a story behind it. And the most important thing you can do with a referral program that will change the success or decide how successful it is to show the success and show the culture in the newsletter. So to thank people who've made certain numbers of referrals, to show the top 5 referrers every now and again in the newsletter, to give them a shout out on social media. If you send people a reward, ask them to send you a photo of them with the reward, for example, and then put that into the newsletter. The more you build that culture in, the better the results will be regardless of the rewards. Yeah, I saw that about the example of unique creative rewards. Towards the end, we can talk about that in sort of the 20 minutes of the discussion. We have loads and loads of examples. I'm always happy to share those. And again, they'll be in the rewards booklet that I'll share as well. And the last thing I want to talk about in terms of growth strategies that are going to work really, really well in 2023 is recommendations. So you may have seen these pop up across a couple of different platforms. The basic idea is after someone subscribes to your newsletter, you show them a little widget with 2 or 3 other newsletters that they can one-click opt into, and they can say yes or no, and you all grow faster together, basically. So on average, the results we're seeing are that if you get together with a group of 3 to 4 other newsletters that you've handpicked because you know they're a similar size, they have a similar audience to you, and you know they're high quality, put together that group, get them together, recommend each other, and on average, you'll grow 3 to 5 times faster, and you will continue to grow 3 to 5 times faster. So compared to basically everything else that you can do for growth, this is far and away the most important, and you only have to set it up once, and then it just keeps running. The challenge with this is that not all platforms that do recommendations are created equal. Some of them will let you do 7 or even 9 recommendations. And once you start doing that, you start overwhelming the other newsletters because someone subscribes and they get 8 different emails all at the same time in their inbox, and the quality becomes very low. They start clicking spam. They start getting very angry. So just bear in mind, if you aren't using our Upscribe tool to do this, if you're using it in an inbuilt platform like Substack, the quality of the subscribers you're getting there, in our experience, is going to be very low. So you need to be very careful with that. You need to be very ruthless in removing them, and also try not to recommend too many at once. By far and away, the best results you'll get are for recommending 3 other newsletters, between 2 and 4. So let's jump into the examples of how you can grow your newsletter. And we're going to look at 3 different examples here. We're going to look at a generic newsletter, we're going to look at a local newsletter, and we're going to look at a B2B niche newsletter. And obviously, we're going to take just hypothetical examples here. So the first one we're going to look at will be just a kind of like generic mass market newsletter. Just to give us a frame of reference, I'm using the Pour Over. They're a 3 times weekly daily newsletter, just a general newsletter from a Christian perspective, kind of like Morning Brew or the Daily Upside or 1440 or many of those other newsletters. Obviously, they're way above 10,000 subscribers now. I mean, they're I don't know, up into the hundreds of thousands for sure. But let's just take them as an example so we have a frame of reference. If they were back at 100 subscribers, what would we do to get them to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, basically for free? So the way I like to do this is with that simple that simple exercise that I shared before, where you try and think through, for each of the 3 growth levers that you have, investing your time, investing into growth loops, and investing your money, what are the best things, the most impactful strategies that you can use to grow that newsletter at this point in time? And my recommendation is you choose no more than 3, ideally 1 or 2 different strategies for each of those 3 levers, so that you end up with something like 4 to 6, 4 to 7 in total, and you really focus on those. And at the beginning, it's going to be very vague. That's why this is very simple. Just kind of plan out, okay, well, how often can I do this? How often should I do this? How many subscribers can I expect from this on a recurring basis? And how many am I expecting to get from that by the end of the year? So if we take that daily generic newsletter like the Pour Over at 100 subscribers, what can we do to grow it? Well, when we look at the time growth lever, the best way that we can invest our time into growing that kind of newsletter, there are probably 2 things that I would do. Firstly, I would make sure that I'm always cross-posting the content that I write in the newsletter to all the different places that my audience hangs out on social media, whether that's Reddit, whether that's in Christian forums, whether that's in local forums, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's into conversations happening in Facebook groups. You don't need to spend all day every day doing this, but it's worth spending an hour or 2 each time to go and promote that content and make sure it gets in front of the right people, at least at this stage. So what I would expect from that is if you spend an hour doing that every week, you'll get 50 new subscribers each time you do that. And over the course of 2023, over the next 11 months, that's going to add up to about 2,000 new subscribers completely free. The second thing I would be doing, which will be more impactful long-term, is cross promotions with other newsletters. So I would begin asking my audience, what do they read? Reaching out to other newsletters with a similar audience, asking my audience if they have their own newsletters. And once or twice a month, at least, I would be doing a cross promotion with them where I give them a shout out, they give me a shout out. We use the magic link, and we'll get at least 50 new subscribers each time from doing that. If we move on to the paid, I chose 2 paid channels for this. I chose social media ads, for example, Meta or TikTok. Doesn't really matter. It just depends on your audience. Probably for the pour over, I think Facebook would work slightly better because they have a slightly older demographic than for TikTok. And if you make sure you install the Upscribe widget on the opt-in form and you make sure you're recommending 2 or 3 other paid newsletters, this growth will essentially be free, maybe even make a slight profit. And you can easily scale that to 10 new subscribers a day, or really you could probably even be at 100 subscribers. It just depends how aggressively you want to grow. Same with the partner program. Connect that up, set how much you want to pay per subscriber, and then really that's just a matter of deciding how aggressively you want to grow. In this case, obviously, we're talking about hitting 10,000 by the end of the year. In reality, if you have a generic sort of newsletter like the Pour Over or Morning Brew or something like that, you don't want to be hitting 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. You want to be growing a lot faster than that from day one if you want to have any chance of being successful. So you're probably investing, 10 or 100 times this into the Facebook growth, into the partner program growth to kick things off and grow to a size that sponsors will take you seriously from as quickly as possible. And then the growth loops that I would be building in for a generic newsletter like this, firstly, free recommendations, partnering up with a couple of other similar newsletters, recommending each other. That's going to be at least 300 new subscribers a month, and that's going to continue over time and only grow. And then for the referral program as well, obviously. With a generic newsletter, the advantage is that your audience can recommend it to basically anybody. There's a lot of people they can refer. So it's worth making sure that you have that built in from day one. And as you can see, you're not going to get a huge number of referrals. It's only going to account for maybe 5 or 10% of your growth in the first year, most likely. But fast forward 2 years, and that same groundwork that you've laid today is going to be up there at 30, 40% of your growth, bringing in thousands and thousands of subscribers every month. Perfect. So we can come back and look at some, if you have any questions on any of this. But let's jump on to the second one now. And we're going to look at a local newsletter. So the one I've picked here is Madison Minutes. I was just scrolling through different local newsletters I've come in contact with. And this is the one for the Madison area of Wisconsin. It's just a mix of events, local news, goings on, exciting stuff around the local area. What I'd be doing there is obviously in this case, when it comes to how you can invest your time to grow the newsletter, cross-promoting to social platforms, as with the generic newsletter, is still useful. What isn't useful is cross-promotions with other newsletters, swaps, because there probably aren't very many newsletters with your audience. And if there are, they probably don't really want to cross-promote with you because they see you as competition. So if you have a local newsletter, cross-promotion's not going to be big for you. What is going to be big is doing what I mentioned earlier and running a giveaway. Going out to the 20, 30 best local businesses who all have email lists and audiences on social media of their own, getting those prizes from them, putting it together in a bundle, doing that twice a year and getting subscribers that way. And that should get you to 10,000 subscribers if you do that twice, just by doing that alone, if you do it well. What we've seen on the paid side work really well for local newsletters and local media businesses are social ads. Again, free because you can add in that Upscribe paid recommendation. And then one that we've tested, one that we've seen work, but that is, I think, underrated, is going back to kind of the old school way of growing local media businesses and just printing some good old flyers with a QR code on them that people can use and stuffing those into mailing boxes and post boxes and letter boxes throughout the area, or ideally paying someone to do that for you. Now, the way people used to do that with just like a link, here is my newsletter, it's great, please sign up, and here's the link or here's the QR code. That's fine, but it's not very cost effective and it's hard to do. if you use a QR code, if you're using that coupon booklet that we talked about from the giveaway, so you're not asking people to sign up for a newsletter, you're saying, hey, we've created this booklet. It's the 20 best places to eat and drink in your local area. Has $2,000 worth of coupons in value. Just grab it here and you'll also get this awesome newsletter. Do that, add in the Upscribe paid recommendations for people who sign up from that, and you've offset the cost, more than offset the cost of doing it, and you'll get super high opt-in rates for a local newsletter. And finally, in the local area, obviously, a referral program works really well as well, because there are so many touch points for people to recommend it. And then finally, we're going to look at a B2B or a niche newsletter. I don't really make much of a distinction when it comes to growth between B2B and just other niche newsletters. Basically, everyone is there for a shared topic, whether that's marketing, whether that's pickleball, whether that's a specific breed of dog or anything like that. It's all really the same when it comes to the growth strategy. Obviously, the content and the relationship is a bit different. So here I'm taking the example of Stack Marketer, which is a really amazing marketing newsletter, way above 10,000. I think they're at above 50,000 subscribers now. But if I was growing that from 100 to 10,000, I would actually take 3 free time investment growth levers. I'd cross-post to social platforms like before. I'd do the cross-promotions with other newsletters and be very aggressive at that. And I'd organize a giveaway, because we know that, especially in the case of niche newsletters, the audience is desperate to reach others. Brands are desperate to reach other people in your audience, and it's very easy to convince them to do something like that. Paid, again, no surprise. Social ads partner program in the same exact way that I would have done for the generic local newsletter. And then the free recommendations and the referral program, again, in the same way as the generic newsletter. Obviously, what you'll see is, because you're in a niche, that the absolute results, it will always be slightly more of a challenge. You'll get worse results objectively than if you have a more broad-based newsletter. The corollary of that is that you should be making a lot more per subscriber. So again, it comes back to that monetization aspect. Okay, so we're going to jump into all the questions and take a look at some examples in a second. I just want to remind you that next week we have the roadmap to 1 million subscribers, which is going to look very different in terms of the tactics and the strategies and the case studies that we'll share of what's working there. It's not the same thing that you do to go from 100 to 10,000. So that will be next week, and I'll include a link if you haven't already signed up for that, along with all of the other stuff that I promised inside of the email that I'll send out later today after the masterclass is finished. Okay, so let's jump into those questions. And I will work through, give me a second while I grab a drink of water. I'm going to work through these questions and then we can start. If you have any other questions that you would like to ask, or if you'd like to share your newsletter and say, well, I'm at X thousand subscribers or X hundred subscribers, what's the most impactful thing I could do, or what's a referral reward I could use, add that in here and we'll try and go through as many as possible. Awesome. So I'm going to jump into these questions now. I'm already seeing there are a lot more questions than we're going to have time to answer in these 15 minutes. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you go to Twitter and search for me, type in Louis Nichols, or just I can put it in here. I'll put it into the chat very quickly. twitter.com/Nichols. If you go to my Twitter, if you just quickly tweet at me with your question, once this masterclass is over, I will also try and answer your question or give you some feedback on Twitter as well. Just try and tweet me rather than going into the DMs, because it will go into my others inbox and I won't see it. But if I don't get a chance to answer it here, please do that. And if you want to share your Twitter so that others can find you as well, please do that too. Okay, So let's jump into the questions. And let's start more towards the beginning. So first question that we're going to look at is from, let's have a look here. Where are we? Okay, so Alif asks, how do you define revenue per subscriber? And I'm not going to go into that right now. What I'm going to say is after this masterclass, I'll share an email with you, and there is a tool that I use, a calculator we created that will show you exactly how to calculate revenue or lifetime value per subscriber based on affiliate purchases, based on advertising that's run to them, based on items that they purchase from you, and so on. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, but the calculator is really simple to use, and it'll give you a really good prediction, plus some estimates of sort of ballpark ranges of where other newsletters like yours are in terms of revenue. So you can tell how well you're doing, I guess. Okay. Let's jump to the next question. So a question there was, do we need all 3 growth levers to grow your newsletter? I think we've covered that already. I think that's fine. Yes, you do, but you need them all at different times. Okay. Let's jump in to the next one. So we have a question here that says, I run a 1,500 subscriber food-centered newsletter. Where would I start to grow the base? Many competitors already have paid subscriptions and do not give space to others. Well, that's fine. You don't need to. If you have a food-centered newsletter, I think it comes back to those channels that we were talking about before, right? So time. Can you post where your audience hangs out on social media to begin with? That's going to get you kickstarted. Secondly, cross promotions. Yet you can't cross promote maybe with other food newsletters because they see you as competition, and that's kind of probably true. But everybody eats food. Most people who read newsletters like food, and most of your readers who like food probably also like news or entertainment or sports, or they have a job and they would be interested in that. So start doing cross promotions with other kinds of newsletters that are happy to cross promote with you. And you can find those by asking your existing audience about newsletters that they have and other newsletters that they read. So it's no excuse just because, oh, well, other food newsletters won't cross-promote with me. That's fine. You don't need other food newsletters to cross-promote with you. You just need other newsletters that have a similar demographic to you. And then with food is very visual. It works really, really well for Facebook ads and things like that. And you can add in Upscribe for the paid recommendations to offset the costs of that because people are interested in food. Again, broad audience, everybody likes food. So you can recommend some really great newsletters to them and get paid for it as well. Okay. Matthew asks, is there a good way to cross-promote with big YouTube channels or people with large followings on social media? Yes, there probably is a good way to cross-promote with big YouTube channels and people with large followings on social media. And the way to do that is to have a large following of your own or a lot of money that you're willing to spend on those promotions, basically. So you either have to have a relationship with them, you've got to have something really compelling to offer them in terms of cross-promotion, or you've got to have a lot of money to basically purchase that cross-promotion or that sponsorship. There's not really any point trying to swing for the fences with this kind of thing and just randomly ask them to recommend you. The only other thing you can do, which again, it doesn't always pay off, but you can do what Amanda Navidad calls permissionless co-marketing, and basically just give them shout outs in your newsletter for free and tag them in it. And occasionally one of them will really like it and will give you a shout out in return. But that's not really a scalable strategy. That's more of a maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't kind of thing. Okay. Perfect. Next question. There's an interesting question here, which is how can we start with Upscribe? That's very easy. Just go to SparkLoop. growth.app/subscribe, and you can get started for free. I've just put the link in the chat. Next question. Thomas asks, cross promotion, how about sharing samples of each other's content in the respective newsletters? That is a great example of doing cross promotion with newsletters. You can take that a step further even and do a newsletter swap or a newsletter takeover where you write their newsletter for one edition, they write yours, or you write sort of an article together and the first half of it is in your newsletter and the second half of it is in their newsletter. Something like that, basically, so that you get that swap over. I'm actually putting together at the moment the finishing touches on it's about a 5,000 word deep dive playbook for how to do cross promotions with all different kinds of ways you can do it and examples of wording and outreach letters and all that kind of stuff. It's going to go live either tomorrow or on Friday. If you are subscribed to our email list, you will get that in your inbox by the end of the week, basically. And that should answer all the questions you have about cross promotion and make it very easy to basically just replicate that playbook and put that into action. Great. Let's do a couple more questions before we end. If you have any new ones, you can still add them in. So Fernando asks, how exactly do you cross-promote your newsletter into social channels? It's a great question. So there are platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook, and some people say Twitter, but there's a bit more of a debate about that, which penalize you if you just share the link. So what you'll see people doing on LinkedIn and Facebook, for example, is they will write out the content, put the content, the good stuff right where your audience is, and then say, if you want more, if you want the deep dive that we're doing next week, check out the first comment. There's a link there where you can go and sign up. So that's one way of doing it. But the more impactful way, I think, especially if you have a smaller audience on those social channels, is not to just sort of post into the void. It's to reply and be useful in conversations that are already happening. So if you write a newsletter on marketing, for example, posting a tweet about your marketing newsletter and sharing your thoughts as a thread, it's good. You should repurpose and cross-post like that and put that content there and say, come and follow, click here in the final tweet to sign up and get the next edition of the newsletter. But even more valuable than that is following other larger marketers on Twitter and responding to their tweets with a comment that's useful, that's interesting, maybe funny, and including a link then to your newsletter there. So tying it back organically like that. You'll get a lot more reach from that. And there's always the chance of being seen by someone interesting as well. So that's probably more important, being part of conversations rather than just sort of jumping into a room and shouting, hey, come get my newsletter. Okay. A question by Alif. What are your thoughts on using lead magnets as a way to convert newsletter subscribers? Are they worth it? Or do you think people unsubscribe once they get the free item? I think yes and yes. I think they are worth it. And I think people unsubscribe once they get the free item. The trick is to make the free item something that only people who would be your ideal subscriber would want, to do a really, really good job of nurturing them into that welcome sequence, and to be very aggressive at unsubscribing people who just aren't interested and aren't opening. There's nothing wrong with getting 100,000 new subscribers onto your email list and ending up with 10,000. If it's easier to get 100,000 and end up with 10,000 good ones than it is to get 10,000 onto your list and end up with 9,999 good ones, that's fine. There's no shame in having a lot of people unsubscribe from your newsletter or be unsubscribed in the first day. All you care about at the end of the day, as long as you're being ethical, is how many engaged, excited, happy subscribers you end up with. Doesn't matter how many drop off to get to that point, basically. So there are obviously lead magnets or situations where lead magnets don't work. I think the most famous example of that is Morning Brew, who just struggled, and they tried all different kinds of lead magnets, all different kinds of things. Nobody wanted a lead magnet for a generic sort of news product. So they ended up ditching it and going with kind of the famous Morning Brew squeeze page that you've seen. So there are cases where it doesn't work, but in the vast majority of newsletters, they do work well, especially if it's a compelling lead magnet that delivers value today, like a coupon booklet, rather than a vague promise of something in the future. Perfect. Let's have a look. I'll do 2 more questions and then we're going to call it a day. So if you have any last very important questions, please put them in now and we'll take a look at them. I'm going to look at 2 very quick ones here and then we'll do that final one. So Howie asks, if we've only got a couple of hundred subscribers, why would a brand want to partner up with me for a giveaway? And the answer is they're not just partnering up with you, you're facilitating that giveaway between that brand and 10 other brands. So you're playing off the brands amongst each other. Basically, you're saying, hey, my newsletter's in, I'm doing all the work for you, so you don't have to do anything. And your brand's in, and non-competing brand with an overlapping audience is in as well. And I'm going to get another one here and another one here. And the total audience reach is going to be hundreds of thousands of subscribers, or tens of thousands of subscribers, and hundreds of thousands of social media followers. So they're not doing it to partner with you. They're doing it because you'll do all the work, and they're partnering up with a much larger audience of the other partner brands, in effect, which is also why you're doing it. So that's the answer to that one. And then someone asks how long a giveaway contest should be. And the answer to that is really it's proportionate to the value of the reward and the amount of work it was to create. So if you're doing a referral giveaway where your audience can win, let's say, an iPad or a MacBook or a Peloton or something like that, best thing to do is to keep the giveaway relatively short. Give them long enough to refer, but not long enough to get bored and for them to say, well, I don't know if I want to wait around a month to see if I'm going to win that thing. You've got to have some FOMO, some urgency to it. So 7 days, 8 days, maybe 10 days for a smaller giveaway that's a referral giveaway like that. If you're putting all this work into coordinating with 10 different brands to run that giveaway, you've got to play with their schedules as well. And not all of their social media and email teams are all going to email out in the same week. So you want to have that over a month. And if the prize is bigger, you want to keep hitting that. And you can attach it to a milestone and say, hey, can we hit 10,000 subscribers for the newsletter by the end of the month? Let's do this drive with the giveaway prize. And if you do that normally for about 30 days or until the end of the month, that's probably the right time period. It's enough FOMO, enough urgency, but gives everyone time to participate and get the results in. Perfect. Do we have any more questions? I'm going to do one more and then we'll call it a day. Let's have a look for a good one. One last one. Okay. And one more question. How do you convert LinkedIn folks to newsletter subscribers? We did cover that quickly. Put the newsletter link in the comments. If you want to learn how to do this on LinkedIn, I'm a little bit not sure about how many numbers I can share, but 2 people to follow would be Caitlin Burgoyne and Chase Diamond on LinkedIn. Go and follow them on LinkedIn, connect with them, check out how they're posting. I can't share exact numbers, but at least one of those 2 is getting over 1,000 new email subscribers a day at this point from just posting on LinkedIn. So I don't know how they're doing it exactly. I can't do that. But go follow them if you're interested in trying it, and just work out exactly what they're doing, try and figure out why it's working, what's common between them, and do the same thing, because they are absolutely crushing it on LinkedIn at the moment, and definitely worth checking out. One more question for the B2B model once more. Okay, I can go back to that very quickly. This is the one that I would choose. And again, I'm going to put the slides into the email that I'll send out afterwards with all the links to the things that I recommended. Again, if you'd like to connect with me, if you have any thoughts, feedback, questions, I prefer a tweet, but shoot me an email as well. That's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you. Hope this was useful. If you have feedback for future ones or suggestions of future events, I'd love to hear them, of things you'd like to learn. And I hope you have a great rest of the day, a great rest of the week. If you're interested in the larger scaling from 10,000 up to 1 million, please come and join us next Wednesday at the same time. Thank you very much. And have a great day, everyone.